person with Parkinson's. He serves as the Assistant Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. He was diagnosed at 38. We also have Sarah Bruton. She is the Clinical Research Coordinator for the SPARKS 3 study at UAB, a multi-site phase 3 clinical trial on a study of Parkinson's disease and exercise. I urge you, if you have recently been diagnosed and you are not on medication, please see Sarah today. This is an amazing opportunity for UAB to have a phase 3 trial. This is kind of the end of all the phases for this clinical trial, and they are looking for help. I have been through a study with their lab. Fantastic people. Reach out to Sarah if you have any questions. And then last but not least, she's behind me, Miss Laura Lieb. I'll let her introduce herself real quick, and then we'll get started.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm a nurse practitioner at UAB Department of Neurology, Division of Movement Disorders. Oh, I do want to make one comment or add to this concept of UAB finding a cure. And I am adding that people with Parkinson's are finding the cure because through your participation, we are making a change in research. So it's not UAB, it's you.
Hello, everybody. All right, so the first question I have is for Laura. So there's said you went through the list of people you need on your team, very thorough on that, but there's some information that the patient needs to give to the doctor so they get the best treatment. So tell us how to best prepare for an appointment.
Okay, I'm going to stand up. I do have information about this, but probably one of the best resources is I use the Davis-Finney Foundation worksheets that say preparing for an appointment for Parkinson's. Now, I can probably get you that link or somehow get it to you. I don't have it with me, but it actually has, you can start with a symptom check sheet, so you don't have to remember all these things, and then you can go to the second page. What are my top concerns? So in general, I recommend, and people with Parkinson's, they can answer this probably better than me, and their loved ones or their care partners. I would usually recommend 3, 4, 5 days before the appointment, you schedule and purposely say, let's talk about this up and coming appointment. What changes do you see? So all of us have a blind spot, right? We have an area that I don't quite know is there. And so I'm offering or opening this up and asking the person that knows me the best, hey, what do you see that's different? What do you think I could, talk to the doctor about? And then if you could write those things down with me or together, probably the top 1, 2, or 3. But the Davis-Finney Foundation worksheets I really like because you don't have to remember what I said because you're not going to remember all these little details. But what I hope you remember is where to go for it. But I do recommend you and your loved one, your spouse, your partner, your family, your friend that knows you kind of together prepare a few days beforehand. If you don't have someone that lives with you, make a phone call. Say, hey, can we talk about this for 15, 20 minutes? And then when you get there, you have it written down. If the provider says, how are you doing? You say, this is how I'm doing, and you read, or you kind of use it as a reference. If somebody may want to add to it, that's a great idea. Also, your provider should be asking you multiple questions. If you see me, and I probably ask like 25 questions, because I don't want that person to say, if I had only known, I would have told you. I don't want that for anyone, but definitely people will say, I don't know if it's Parkinson's, but that's a good thing to ask me. Ask me that. I don't know if it's Parkinson's, but, because I should be able to answer that or tell you, I don't know, let me find out.
follow up. So if they bring in a piece of paper with them and they say, okay, before we leave, I would like to cover these topics. Tell them how they can take control of the appointment while they're there.
That's a hard thing, because sometimes like if you say, for example, have this really on your mind, I would say it just like that. I know what you're telling me, doctor or nurse practitioner or PA, but this is my number one concern right now. So I could look at someone and miss the mark because I've assumed something as a provider. But you are the person experiencing it, and you can say something to the effect of, I understand what you're seeing, but this is my main concern, and read it off. If they still don't listen to you, at the end say, I need to go over something that we missed today. You don't have to say they missed it, but you know that's what happened.
All right, Sarah. So the Sparks 3 study, can you tell us a little bit about that and the exclusions?
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm the clinical coordinator for the Sparks study at UAB. The Sparks 3 study is a phase 3 multi-site clinical research trial. It's a big mouthful, but basically, as she was saying, it's an end stage, one of the most important phases in clinical research. So we're looking at the effects of aerobic exercise on people with Parkinson's who have not yet started medication and are within 3 years of their diagnosis. So we're looking at moderate versus high intensity treadmill exercise that's determined by a heart rate max that we get at baseline. And then we're looking at the signs, symptoms, and disease progression of PD with this intervention. So we have 26 states or 26 sites in the US, and then 2 in Canada. UAB is one of the only ones in the South, and we're definitely one of the biggest. So if you are interested in this study, this would likely be your hub. What the study is basically trying to determine, there is no prescription for the intensity and dosage of exercise right now in the way that there is for medication. So medications go through trials, so the doctors are able to say, you need this, and you need this, and you need to take it this many times a day. That's what we're trying to do with this exercise. And we're hoping that with the results of this study, we're able to not only make a prescription of exercise that is helpful in the progression of Parkinson's, we're hoping that it impacts the quality of life both of individuals with Parkinson's and their caregivers. So there's evidence that resistance exercise, balance exercise, and endurance exercise is therapeutically beneficial to people with Parkinson's. All of those have components in our Sparks exercise. So if you are between 40 and 80, within 3 years of your diagnosis and not on medication, we would be really happy to talk with you about maybe getting into the study. And I also want to highlight that not living in Birmingham isn't a hard barrier. We have ways that we can get you into our clinic in a way that works for you. So you do have some mandatory in-person visits, but for the most part, we're able to work with you and have it be virtual and accommodating as best we can. Yes, and there is financial compensation for the study at different time points, depending on the type of assessments that we do. I don't have the exact final amount that you get paid in front of me. I believe it's around 100 to 300. I'm not positive, but I'll get that for you if you're interested.
All right, so what if someone doesn't qualify for this study? How do they get knowledge about for other studies?
So this study, as well as all the studies that you could be eligible for, should be listed on clinicaltrials.gov. That's the federal database of every approved clinical trial that is currently enrolling. I meant to also highlight our Sparks website, which is www.sparks3pd.com. So it's SPARX3pd.com. But I would recommend looking at clinicaltrials.gov. UAB also has a website that lists all of their research out of the university. And just speaking with your provider, whether that's a physical therapist or your neurologist or your primary care doctor, if you indicate to them that you're interested, even if they don't know specifically what trials are going on that you might be eligible for, they can usually look into it or ask around. You can also come to them with a study you might be interested in and ask them if they think it would be a good call for you.
So are y'all going to do a follow-up email to the participants here? Can we include that link? All right. Michael Fitz, how are you, mister? I ain't never seen you before. No, I like Michael. So how old were you when you were first diagnosed?
38 years old.
And what made you decide to go to a doctor to see what was going on?
So there's a couple different things that I wanted to share. One of the situations was that I was having, one of the situations that I was having to deal with was a tremor. And it really came to head one day when I was going home from church and my friend was in the passenger seat. And he said, "Did you realize that you were shaking?" And I told him no. Well, I told him no. It just kind of comes and goes. It wasn't anything specific. But the other thing is that's kind of odd and that people go to. Have you ever been to the doctor and you just couldn't really articulate what was going on? You knew something wasn't right, but you just couldn't articulate it? Well, that's the other thing that happened to me, and that's what made me go and get diagnosed.
So the actual diagnosis, was it a positive or negative experience? Was it a more than one visit type of thing? How did that go?
If I'm honest with you, the experience was horrible. And let me share why it was so horrible. So, I went in, well, first of all, I had gone back and forth with my primary care physician for at least a year or so, and she couldn't really determine what was going on. I didn't expect her to. I knew there was something that was neurological going on, but I couldn't, figure out what it was. So a couple of things that she said to me. One time when I had gone to a follow appointment, she said, "Well, everybody has a tremor nowadays." That is not helpful helpful at all. The other thing that she said to me, which was like almost a kiss of death, is she said, "Well, at least we know it's not Parkinson's." This is what she said to me before I went to my next appointment. So that was not good. And so when I finally got a time in with the neurologist or the movement disorder specialist, we did this series of tests. We were talking about that and like walking up and down the hallway. And so he comes back in the room after 5 minutes and says, "You have Parkinson's." And it was just so dry and cold. It just didn't leave me with a warm and fuzzy feeling that I felt like I should have had. He asked me did I have any questions, and as you can imagine, what am I supposed to say? How am I supposed to ask a question when you just dropped this bomb in my lap? So what ended up happening is when I came to myself, but I guess you guys know what I'm saying. When I came to myself, I asked the neurologist, first of all, I asked him, could I get a second opinion? And I knew the answer was going to be, of course you can. But the thing about it is, I also had the idea of saying, I lost my train of thought. Bear with me for just 1 second. This happens from time to time. Thank you so much. Thank you. don't know if I've been telling the story too long or she just really, exactly.
Me too, man.
So I asked him, could I have an MRI? And he said, absolutely not. Waste of time, waste of resources. And so while I understand now why he said that, once again, that's a situation where it's just not positive. That was not helping me. If he would have said, well, you know, there's really no definitive test for it, and you know, that probably wouldn't be a good use of resources. And lastly, after I fired him, my second movement disorder specialist agreed with the diagnosis, but the difference was that she said, I can understand why you would want to have an MRI done, and she set the paperwork in motion. And come to find out, which was ironic, I found out that I had a small tumor on the back of my pituitary gland, which was only caught because they did an MRI. So.
Thank you, Michael. I'm trying to go through everybody because we do have a time limit. So, next one I have is for Cindy. You went through that whole very detailed program, but what is your number one top advice for a care partner?
I think I would say learn about the disease process and know what to expect. And again, we went through this years and years of just reacting because we had no idea what to expect. We didn't know hallucinations were part of it. I couldn't figure out why he was hallucinating. We didn't know constipation and loss of sense of smell that he had had 10 to 15 years before the diagnosis. We didn't know that was a part of it. So know what you're dealing with, I think, is the most important thing, and that will allow you to know where to go, what resources to look for, and give you a better idea of what you're going to need in the future. Have a plan, and don't just react like we did. Again, we didn't do it the right way.
So follow up. My doctor said I might deal with some apathy. I said I don't care, you know. So how do you deal with, or suggest someone deal with the person with Parkinson's apathy? And of course, when the care partner is worn down, they have some apathy too. So how do you go about giving advice about overcoming that apathy?
How to overcome apathy. First, the education. Apathy is a common symptom. It's also, apathy can occur in anyone. It can also be kind of a reflection of maybe some caregiver stress, or even stress with a person with Parkinson's. There's some feeling sometimes that I, am causing stress, even though most people would say, this is the disease. This is not, this is a condition you're battling. So with apathy, first, I would say education and understanding that there are sometimes forms of apathy that are associated with under-medication, not always. So sometimes you can talk to your provider about it. Sometimes apathy overlaps with depression. Actually, it's not uncommon. Sometimes addressing those symptoms like depression, sleep issues. You get up 5 or 6 times at night. You never wake up feeling refreshed. You can't get motivated. Apathy on top of it. So how can I improve sleep? How can I improve mood? How can I improve your on time? It doesn't directly make apathy go away, but it gives you more oomph, more power, more ability to help those challenges. Exercise is very beneficial for almost every symptom, and having those what I call extra support systems. That friend, that family member, and you say on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I want to go walking. Will you hold me accountable? You come up with a time, a plan, who's going to be with you, and you create a targeted attack against your apathy. You don't back down off of it. And then you tell people, I need help in that area. I'm sure there's other ideas, but those are some of mine.
I also find being part of a support group and the education you get there, plus you see other people dealing with things and you say, oh, well, that wasn't so hard for them, I could do that. A lot of it is telling yourself something's harder than what it is. Dr. Dobbins, I feel if everyone taught like you did, we would learn a lot more. Do you have any more recommendations for other helpful exercises as far as the pelvic region and all that?
Of course I do. So, we can talk about Kegels, pelvic floor contractions, but that's not always the answer, right? I'm sure at least many of you ladies have heard, just do your Kegels and your incontinence will go away. But that's not how it works. It's much more about pressure management. So if you can learn how not to hold your breath when you're doing stuff, you are going to make all the difference in the world. So whether that is picking something up or getting out of the car, we all do it. We get up out of the sofa and we're like, ugh, and we grunt, right? And to grunt, we have to hold our breath, and it's air against our closed glottis. And when we're grunting, we're pushing pressure down, and when we push pressure down, we push pee out. So breathe. That's the best one. Breathe.
I'm going. All right. My doctor said I might lose my sense of smell. I said, well, that stinks. Sense of humor, come on. All right, Katie. So what has been your biggest hurdle with Parkinson's? And what is your best advice? Number one piece of advice for someone who is just diagnosed.
Wow, thanks for the hard one. I think the hardest part of Parkinson's is the realization that the diagnosis doesn't end life. When you can come to grips with the diagnosis and there is a grieving, give yourself permission to grieve and then get yourself out of it. If you sit in the grief, you are going to go nowhere but down. And once you realize it's not the end of the road, my thing is, God chose this road for me. I sure didn't. However, because He chose this road for me, He allowed this to happen. He has purpose for me. And if I can remember I have purpose, I have a reason to get up in the morning. Mine is called the 3 sitting at home doing homeschool and my husband sitting over there. That is my purpose for getting up every morning. Does that mean the apathy, the depression, the anxiety, God help them, doesn't exist? Oh, it's there. My biggest piece of advice, communicate. We get really good at not wanting the sympathy and the empathy from other people because we have a diagnosis. We don't want, I'm so sorry, baby, are you having a bad day today? Or, oh, you're shaking, are you all right? You get tired of it. So we hide. We hide the non-motor symptoms. We try to hide the physical symptoms. But our care partners, those that are around us, those that go to the doctor with us, our doctors need to know. They can't help if they don't know.
Well, one of the things you talk about, people noticing the tremors and things like that. There was a man at a restaurant and he was just very disconnected. And he noticed the other family across from him was staring at him. And he turned to him and said, oh my goodness, I've never seen some people sit so still before. So it turned it into an opportunity and they asked questions about what was going on. So don't be afraid to hide it. Embrace it. I mean, you can't control it, so. All right, Teri, you talked about singing in the car. Are there some other things that you do to, any other practical tips?
I think
one of them is just try to be around people that are encouraging, not people that are encouraging like, oh, let me help you with your Parkinson's, but just people that are up. I have some ladies in my church that I just enjoy spending time with because they take me out of my world of Parkinson's. They take me into service for other people. So that's one of them, serving other people as much as I can. And then just doing what gives your heart passion. Well, this spring, I love to garden, and that was before I broke my wrist, so hopefully this will heal back up and I'll be back at it. But I had a friend tell me that if you keep going down the same path, you'll keep doing the same thing and getting the same place. And so I decided to take that literally. I live up at the lake, and we have a path that goes down to the lake. And it's a gravel path, and it's lovely, and it takes us to the swim pier. But I wanted a different view. I wanted a view of the big water. So I decided single-handedly to go out there and start chopping down weeds and make a path through through the forest. And if you're ever up in Smith Lake, come up, I'll let you come down my path and sit on my swing and watch the lake. But I went and I carved a path, and I put pretty things on the path. And I just did some of that. It took me, how long did it take? Several months, honey. And he put the gravel down because I wasn't about to haul rocks. That wasn't going to happen. But I took a project that really was going to take a long time, but was also a mental and spiritual project that took me out of my comfort zone. And now I have a path. My next plan is to make a labyrinth, and then I've got another path down an idea. And just something that I am looking forward to every day, and it's pretty, and I love it, and it brings me joy.
All right, so we're almost at the end here. My practical advice will be do not isolate yourself. That's the worst thing you can do. The physical effects of being isolated are just as bad as I think I read smoking a packet and a half of cigarettes a day. If you totally isolate yourself. So there is a physical element to being isolated. That's one of the reasons I go to all these things. Last year I traveled 19,000 miles volunteering all over the country, but it's what keeps me alive and purposeful and everything else. And if you want to find your niche, if you want to talk about how to be a volunteer, I've been involved with just about every organization there is. We can help find where you need to be. And plus, Parkinson's Association of Alabama, they need people to check people in at these events. And so you could give a little bit there. So do not be afraid to put yourself out there and volunteer and give back a little bit. I have my business cards over there if you just want to brainstorm, and I'm going to give it over to Katie to wrap it up.
Thank you, BJ. Thank you, panel. Let's give them a hand. A lot of what I do as a person with Parkinson's, especially a young onset person with Parkinson's, is I want to advocate. You know, people talk about Parkinson's and what's their immediate image is the old white man slumped over. I am the face of Parkinson's. We talk about wanting a cure, we talk about wanting change, we want Washington to do things. We have to let Washington know that Parkinson's is not just the old white man's disease. There are many faces to Parkinson's. I don't know how God's going to use this. I don't know what God's going to do. Advocate. Let people know. There's only about 80 of us here today, but there's 16,000 people with Parkinson's in Alabama that we know about. We have a community. We have to help each other. We have to help others help us. Advocate. Let people know. And together, we're stronger.